G'day, welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we are breaking down the premium defenders. They're the first guys you look at when you open up AFL Fantasy. So which ones are the most important to select? Let's go!
Hodges done it from nowhere. Blasting the goal from inside the 10. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy. Joined once again, 2024, Luke Roderson. How are you, mate?
Really good, mate. Really good. Ready to discuss defenders and get stuck into things.
Yeah, it's good to actually finally start to... I mean, we talked a little bit about some specific players in the last couple of pods, but we're going to be going deep dive into the players that we are looking at for our teams and starting to build them up, because there's, to be honest, not a lot of time between now and the start of the season. It's shorter kind of build-up period. There's literally 2 months until the first game that matters for fantasy basketball, for fantasy AFL.
He's lost. I think it's good, but hey, I mean, we tend to talk ourselves in circles, don't we? Like,
sometimes.
You just kind of end up talking about the same stuff and overthink things. So the quicker the better, I reckon.
Quicker the better. Let's get stuck into it. So we are talking about premium defenders. Now, the definition of a premium that we're using today is someone who's more than 750k.
Okay.
Again, you can cut that line sort of any which way. That's just sort of where I thought would be reasonable for us to expect, because if we're selecting these players, for the most part, we're hoping to have them in our team for the majority of the season. They may not be best six, but they are definitely in and around the top of the bunch.
We're paying top dollar, mate. We want
top
points.
Dollar. We want points. We want someone who's going to, get it done. So we're going to go through some of these now. We've picked some that we are keen on, but also wanted to make sure we touch on the most popular. So we're going to go through these guys basically in, conjunction to their ownership percentage and have a discussion on, whether we think that that's good, or maybe some counter arguments, maybe don't have these guys on your team. So why don't you kick us off with the first name on our list, who is the most popular premium of any line in AFL Fantasy?
Nick Dacos is a painful name to bring up too, because I mean, it went pear-shaped for us last year, not owning him at the start. And to me, the fact that he's so highly owned, it defies a little bit of logic, like in terms of the fact that the popular strategy typically with AFL Fantasy now is to hunt value. Obviously, the people getting on him have either just come in and clicked on the top guy, or they think that he's got some upside. What do you reckon he can go this year?
Well, here's the thing. If it was a normal season, I would very much think that him being selected in your team is very justifiable, because he averaged, so he's priced at this year at 108.7, so rounded up to 109. But he has an injury-affected game in his average, the last average. And so if you take that one game out, he averaged for the season 112.5. And he had a little bit of a role change during the season as well. Like in the start of the season, he was more of that halfback kick-in guy, and then he moved more into the midfield as the season went on. And in games where he played 60% or more CBAs, he actually averaged nearly 114 points. So just based on where he's priced at, you've got maybe 4 or 5 points of upside based on those figures alone. Not to mention the fact that he's only going to the AFL in his third season. He's a gun. He's in a good team. I understand that there's probably upside, even though he is, quote-unquote, he's the most expensive defender. I do think that there's upside, and there's a realm of possibility that he's the highest averaging player come season's end.
Oh, it's not sort of out of the stretch of the imagination. The thing with picking a guy like this is we know that we all have to own him by the end of the year.
Yes.
Full stop. He's going to be a top 6 defender. So if you're picking him now, to me, then you're probably looking at something in the first sort of 6 games of the season going, I really like that. I think that he can put some big points on the board. So, but when I went digging, I found a few things that might even be to the contrary of that. So we know that he's got a round 5 bye. Round 5 bye. But the other thing that I had a little bit of a look at was that last year he only went sub 100 five times. Sorry, against 5 teams. Carlton was twice he went sub 100 against Carlton.
They're a hard matchup.
3 of those teams that he plays he plays him in the first 6 rounds of the season.
Yeah, right.
As well as that bye.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe not like looking too much into that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I know I'm going to be proved wrong. This is the
he's
thing.
a gun. Like,
I'm
we're
talking
not here to say that he's not a gun. Like, because I think you and I are both in the camp of I don't think you should pick him in your starting squad for fantasy. Like, that's just my opinion. I don't see a world where I'm going to start Nick Dacos in my AFL fantasy team. Like,
I just know it's going to fucking kill me.
It's going to be good, but like
hard.
It's hard to sometimes remove yourself from what was last season. And last season, when we didn't have him in our sides, we were throwing up at the end of Sunday every time because it was painful to watch because he put on big scores. But he put on big scores and he started the season priced at 87 or whatever he was. So when he was averaging 110 for the first 6-7 weeks, that's, you know, nearly 20, 25 points higher than what he was priced at. Everyone else had him because he was cheap and they got a leg up. But this time around, if he goes and starts averaging 110, well, he's like going up, he's 2 points above what he's priced at. So it's not actually going to hurt you quite as much. You've saved the money by not picking him and hopefully used it more wisely in the rest of your team. So I do think it's important that we kind of separate him being as good as he was last year and thinking you just got to pick him because he was so good and he hurt me. And if I didn't have him, or he was great because I did have him, it's a whole different year, whole different price point that you're starting to start this season. So I think it's important to separate that fact. It reminds me a little bit of like a Sam Doherty last year, how for some reason these defenders, and we know that someone like a Dacos, chances are he's going to be a fair way away from the next best defender. Do you think that there's credibility in the argument that if he's 10 points better than the next best defender, you just square that away, and even if he's not quote-unquote value, it doesn't matter?
It depends, I think, where you might find that you can spend that money elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? So if you're thinking, I mean, I know it's tempting to just look at the lines in isolation, but if you don't have Dacos in that line and you've got value in the defenders, well, where else can you spend that money potentially? That would be the only thing I'd say.
Mate, you're sounding like a smart AFL fantasy coach these days. Bloody hell. Don't look at the lines in isolation. Great advice. Yes, I definitely agree. I think that, like, and I hear it a lot and I see it a lot, and the argument never really holds weight because I don't care how much more he's scoring than the next best defender or person in the position. If he's already priced that much better than them to start off with, you're not actually gaining an advantage if he's scoring. Like, if I select last year, for example, and you know it worked out pretty well, but if I selected Jordan Dawson compared to a Sam Doherty, now even if Jordan Dawson went on to average 100, which is what he was priced at, and Doherty went on to average 110, I'm not 10 worse points better off than you because at the start of the season I paid 10 points less. Yeah. So we're effectively equal. We're even.
You spent the money elsewhere.
I spent the money elsewhere. So I think that if that's kind of a reason that you're using to pick him, I think I would consider other things.
We're going to be eating humble pie.
We are going to... Look,
I can see people watching this video going, these blokes, fuck it, they got it wrong last year, they're going to get it wrong this year. He's going to come out and go 130, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
So I will eat my humble pie.
Look at his fixture. He starts off with Sydney.
So Sydney was one of the teams who went sub 100.
That's a tough team for defenders. St Kilda, he's going to have 150.
So yeah, St Kilda went massive.
Happy to have that. Lions, I think you could do really well against them too. Like, Lions, they're not a tagging team or anything like that.
So 125 against the Lions, I assume.
So 2 out of his first 3 games, I think he's going to have a big score. Even the Swans, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 100 plus.
Yep.
Round 4,
Hawthorn.
Pain. You have
to think.
McGinnis. You were big last year in terms of not jumping at the tag Shadow.
That's a proven one.
That's a different story for you then?
I think so. I mean,
Finn McGinnis?
We had to wait until round 21 to see it. We saw it in the preseason, and that was us. We jumped at Shadows then, didn't we? And so we missed all of the great scoring beforehand. But then when we got to round 21, we knew about it. We saw it. Yes. He came out, and he did get injured. But it was already...
It was bad looking beforehand, before he got injured.
It was. So you go, okay, well, maybe he gets you plus 100 for the first 2 rounds. They could even be big rounds. He gets smashed in round 4. Yep. He has a bye in round 5. And then who's he?
He comes back against Port Adelaide, who's a red team on defenders and midfielders.
Port Adelaide, he played twice last year, and he went sub 100 one of those times.
Yep. So, I think... There's a strong case for me to say fade him. I am very surprised the fact that he is the most popular premium in all of AFL Fantasy. I do wonder if that is just the fact that he's the best averaging defender. He's also a very iconic player, and obviously people love to watch him play, and they're maybe following your rules, mate. I don't know. Maybe this is your fault.
I should pick him. I should fucking pick him.
But at this stage, I think that he is definitely someone you can fade in AFL Fantasy.
It's a good start, mate. We spent 10 minutes talking about a bloke that we don't want to pick.
Let's go!
This is going to be 2 hours.
Who is next? Oh, this guy deserves a bit of a soundbite here.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
Hayden Young. Let's go. Hayden Young, who was our Nick Dacos answer last season. He's soared up recently. He was down the list in terms of team ownership percentage, but he is right up there. 28% of AFL fantasy teams have the Fremantle Docker midfielder playing in their defense for fantasy. Are we ready to get hurt again, Luke?
Mate, I'm pitching a tent down here. The table's about to levitate because
no.
Hayden Young is a midfielder. I mean, if you go on the Fremantle website, you watch the video of him post-training, he is training with the mids. He's talking about midfield stuff. He is a midfielder. So, obviously, at the back end of last year, we saw 4 or 5 games where Hayden Young played as a midfielder, and it was pretty good from what I saw. I mean, I'm not expecting him to now be like suddenly this 110, 115 guy, but he's priced at 89. I'm expecting him to be 100 guys in midfielder. Yeah. What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Look, the comments sound promising. Like, they sound like this is going to be his new role. Yeah. Like, it wasn't just something that they just kind of threw down there at the end of last season. Obviously, Fremantle didn't live up to their own expectations last year, so they're going to change something, right? And Hayden Young maybe is someone that can follow in the success of someone like a Jordan Dawson, who's like, that clean left foot, good ball user.
He's a defender coming into the midfield, and we've had a few of those recently that pop.
Yeah, and I will always credit Selby, who was the person that I think about when this, like, defenders becoming midfielders is like a key to success, because they know how to find space to get marks. Yep. They're defensively minded. They love to tackle. And obviously, they're good ball users, so teams want them to have the ball in their hands so their disposals can be high. So the thing that most impressed me at the end of last season was actually his tackle numbers. So he had 5 games, like he referenced.
We went from watching him play thinking this guy couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag to watching him and thinking this guy's tough as woodpecker lips. Like,
he gave it a red hot crack.
It was a swing, wasn't it? It was a massive swing.
He averaged 7.4 tackles per game in those 5 games.
Fuck.
Last season, only one player averaged more than 7.4 tackles for the entire season.
Who was it?
I believe it was Rory Laird. Let me double check that one.
Jeez.
I don't want to spit rubbish, but
that's impressive. I think the other thing that might be sort of worth kind of noting as well is how that impacts some of the other Fremantle players as well. Mm-hmm. It might not be something that we talk about in depth now, but I think it might be worthwhile thinking about who else goes through that midfield rotation. Even little tidbit from that interview with Hayden Young was that he was actually very forthcoming with information. He said that Heath Chapman up into the midfield as well, whether that's midfield traditional, whether that's going out onto the wing, but that could be, another guy to watch as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think, do you think it's all sunshine and rainbows for Hayden Young? Like, can you think of a reason not to pick him?
If he's in the
midfield,
if he's in a midfield role, then I think like you'd almost have to fall over yourself to be that talented a player, play in the midfield and average less than 100 points. That's just the way I see it. I think that of all of the sort of premium price defenders that you can pick, I think that he potentially presents, some of the most upside.
I lied before. There were several players that averaged over more than that.
It's good numbers, but
Matt Rowell led the league with 8.3, so not that much more than him. Rory Laird 8, Tom Atkins 7.6, and Bontempelli 7.5. So 4 players. Okay, so his tackling ability in a small sample size, mind you, was right up there. My only concern is because those tackle numbers are so high, and in that time he averaged 97.8, is that maybe something that if those tackle numbers regress back a little bit more to sort of middle of the pack, is he someone that has that high ceiling?
Well, you're looking at a guy that at the start of 2023 was planning on being a defender.
Yep.
And then Fremantle was so shit that in round, 18, they've said, hey, can you go play midfield? He's now done a full preseason as a midfielder. He knows he's going to be a midfielder. He knows, all of the Freo tabs. He knows where he needs to be positioned at stoppages. So I'd look at that and think, I see how that can be a little bit of a flag, but surely, the glass half full side of that is that he's now a midfielder.
Yeah, I do agree. I was just sort of posing the question. And the other thing I will bring to the everyone's remember that what he did last year, I think the first 2 or 3 games, he was in the midfield as a tagger. Like he wasn't there just, see pill, get pill. He was doing a role as like a, apprenticeship kind of thing. Then they kind of loosened that off a little bit towards, I think the last 2 or 3 games. So
it's a good little flag you bring up, because in that interview that I was watching, there was a question about that, and he said, I'll play my role for the team. So I think there is still the possibility that they might say, hey, go,
But at least we do have a reference point to say he can score well in that role. Like, even if he is doing a bit of a job, the tackle numbers were there.
I think he tagged Lachie Neale and got 2 Brownlow votes.
Yeah, that was his highest scoring game of the season, actually. That game where he was tagging Lachie Neale, he had 10 tackles that game. So he can score in a tagging role, and dare say, I think, if he is getting more disposals in a non-tagging role, I think that could also be a good thing. So I think he's a very strong pick, despite the pain that he caused us last year. And I've always said, it wasn't Hayden Young that was sickening to watch. It was his bloody teammate, Luke Ryan.
Steal the kickouts.
And just people not giving him the ball, because I still maintain I think he's a great player. But we're not Hayden Young again.
20 minutes, 2 players.
Let's go. All right, let's keep going. Next one, we're talking about... I'm going to break the script here. I'm going to combine 2 players from the same team in this next one.
Okay.
Jack Sinclair, who was the next highest in terms of ownership percentage, and Nazaya Wanganeen-Millera. Do you think that we are looking at either of these players, one of these players, or both of these players?
From where I sit, it's both of these players. The thing that I obviously like about Jack Sinclair is the way that he finished the year. And I think anyone who owned him, from his buy last year was very happy with his performance. The only sort of caveat that you put on that is you go, well, if he comes out and repeats that this coming year, shit start, good finish, and you pick him as a starter, it's a horrible pick. Yeah. So we're picking him based on the fact that we think he's going to continue, the stuff that he did in the back half of the season. So he was flirting with a midfield role at points during the season.
Yeah, his role was a bit all over the place. Like, it wasn't something that you can really... I mean, at least from what I've researched, you might tell me something different, but at least from what I researched, it wasn't like he had a period here where he was in the midfield and then a period where he was defence. It was a bit like week to week. You couldn't really know what to expect from him.
It was a little all over the shop, but I noticed that the last few weeks of the season, he kind of settled into a no CBA role. So, and that coincided with, pretty good scoring.
Until the finals, like round 25, which I think was their only finals game where they versed the Giants, he was 62%. So do we weight that more because it's a finals game, or like what does that tell us?
I don't think I'd read into that too much. I can't think of the game off the top of my head, but there could be a few different factors. I'd be looking at the big chunk of data.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I do think, I don't know, he probably... And they've also gone out and recruited players like Paddy Dow.
Well, he's not getting a midfield role if Dow's there. They've got Dow Jones. Have you heard that?
No? Who?
Paddy Dow, Zach Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And they got Stocker in the back line. They're
a
bloody financially smart team, aren't they? Dow Jones and Stocker. Fucking hell.
Yes, they are. They're very financially savvy. But no, they do have other roles or other bodies I think they can put in there that means that Sinclair can be a bit more of that halfback running sort of type. Does that sort of dissuade you from picking him and Nazaya Wanganeen, thinking they'll steal points off each other?
So you're sort of saying, I think there's some points to go around back there, to be honest. And Jack Sinclair is kind of does a little bit of what he wants off that half-back line too. Like Wanganeen-Millera, you'd have to check the stats, but I feel like he plays a little bit deeper, takes the kick-outs, a bit of bounce off. And then
he's a bit more of that Tom Stewart, Luke Ryan kind of guy, whereas
Jack Sinclair's up to the back of the stoppage.
Yeah, he's a bit more Doherty kind of style.
That's just the feel I get. I don't have any stats to back that up, but I don't suspect that, we're going to look at one guy that's just smashing it with the scoring. The other guys, really, it's to his detriment. So, at the moment, they're both sitting in the Oxlongs, mate. So
they're both sitting at Mitchman as well. Just to support your, hypothesis here, post buys, Sinclair averaged 107.3, and he's priced at 102. So went, what did the average pre-buy? 96. So he saw an 11-point jump after the buy. Nazaya Wanganeen-Millera also saw an increase. He went up to 98 post-buy, and he is also priced at 91. So both have value and both increase their scoring in the back half of the season, which suggests to me that they can coexist when they both increase at the same time of the year, playing more so off the halfback. So I do think there's room to have both. I think, are we safe in saying the Saints game style is going to be pretty similar this year because second year, different coach, he's not going to change anything dramatic?
Yeah, I can't see him throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, like, they didn't play bad football, and they started the year quite well from memory.
But that's the thing, they started the year quite well, and that's when these guys had their worst scores.
Yeah, I don't see it changing drastically.
Yeah. I think,
put it that way.
And again, another one, they don't have early buys, so you've got them all the way through to round, where are they at? Round 15. So they've got the very last buy. You're going to get 14 rounds in a row with these Saints boys. And also, they have a really good run, actually, to start the season. Know what you would call red teams in the first 6 weeks. So I do think that is also important to note. Let's move on to the next guy, who is another popular player. He was a very popular player last year. Well, maybe not by the end of the season, by the amount of time he screwed people over. The sick dog, James Sicily. He is in 23% of fantasy teams at the moment, $943,000. What are we doing with Sicily?
If I wanted to ride a roller coaster, I'd go to a theme park. We live in Queensland. I just shoot down the road. I'll go to fucking Dreamworld.
Yep.
But I don't want to ride a roller coaster. Suspensions, floor games.
Yep. I mean, there's highs.
Roll changes.
Yeah,
certainly there are highs. You've spoken like a true fucking drug addict or something.
There's come downs as well.
Oh, there's come downs. So I want to get my points. Nice.
Just a little bit more relaxing. Yeah, start of the season. Let's just ease into it.
We expect Hawthorn to be better this year, though. We both tipped them to improve.
You would hope so. Like just being the young side that they are, and obviously
so less pill down there for him.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that leads to my expectation of them being better and this hurting Sicily is the amount of marks that he had. He averaged, I think, I had the stats somewhere.
It was Wax City down there sometimes,
ridiculous amount of marks. So he averaged 9.95 marks per game. Only one player in the last 11 years has ever averaged more than 9 marks per game, and he nearly averaged 10. So he's by far the most amount of marks per game in the last 11 years, and the person that did that anywhere close to that over 9 was Sam Doherty in 2017 when the Blues were pretty shit.
How about this little patch for him? But 125, 165, is that a suspension?
I think there's a buy in there.
Or buy, 130. Suspension.
Oh, no, I think it might have been a suspension. I can't remember now. But
did he get suspended twice, or was it just once?
No, he got suspended twice.
Oh, well, that must
one for one game and one for 2 or 3, I think.
That's a roller coaster. Yeah. But there's no denying there's a massive ceiling
massive
there.
Ceiling.
That
massive
could be,
ceiling.
Yeah, fuck. Against the right team, a captaincy on him could fucking propel you where you want to go.
Yes, but I think we're both in agreement that he has to come down as Hawthorn get better. Like, especially at the start of the season where teams are hopeful. You know, it's like we can do better this year. We can win.
That's gonna be us with
Let's
Richard.
Stop chipping around to Sicily.
Yeah. I'm not going there, but I mean, it's just mine.
Next player. I know you want to have a bit to say about this guy, Harry Sheezel, the rookie sensation from last year. Did he win the Rising Star?
Yeah.
He did. Yeah. Rising Star. Harry Sheezel. Premium defender in his first season, legend. Yeah. Well, what are we doing with Harry Sheezel? No early buy.
The thing is, maybe it's like a little mental shift you have to make here, but if you're picking him this year, you're picking him as premium.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of thing to Dacos, what we talked about.
Yeah.
He's priced much differently, obviously.
The way he's priced now, you're picking him in the anticipation that you have him for the rest of the year, that he's a top 6 forward. The thing that I think maybe people have in the back of their mind is this comparison to Dacos. Obviously, so Dacos burst onto the scene in his first season, averaged something like 88, and then Sheezel's come out, he's averaged 97 in his first season.
Better. Is he better than Dacos?
Better than Dacos. And then Dacos takes it to 108 or whatever it was this season.
Why can't Sheezel do the same thing?
Well, that's what I mean. Is that what everyone's thinking in their mind?
I think there is a level of that.
Dacos is a better player than Sheezel.
I'd have to say so. And he's in a better team.
Yeah.
Like completely different, night and day in terms of like the team and their ability to get Sheezel involved.
Yeah, and the fact that whole Collingwood system for a strong portion of the year was literally designed about getting Dacos that ball up half back.
100%.
That contributed to the scoring. The thing that the little flags that pop up for me with Sheezel are that There's probably some talk of him getting some more midfield time, potentially a little bit of small forward time.
Which normally, well, I don't like not the forward time, but normally the more midfield time is like, hey, celebration. But I don't know if that's the case with Sheasel.
That's the thing with that juicy half back roll is just so uncontested. You can just wax, you get marks, you get kicks galore. You go into the midfield, some fucking 28-year-old 100 gamer is going to come put their fucking elbow in your chest and say, not today, young fella. You know what I mean? So I think, yes, the tackles would increase if you went in there, but those uncontested marks,
they dry up completely. Look, I am not against picking him. I think compared to some of the other guys, which we have said no to in Sicily and Dacos.
I'd pick him before.
I'd pick him before those two.
Yeah.
Because I do think the fact that he is 19, I really rate him as a player. I think he's very, very good. I can see an argument that if, for whatever reason, he still has the role that he had last season, like we get a look at him in the preseason, it looks a very similar role. I can see the fact that he's young, he doesn't have an early bye. Sure, I can see that. There's a bit of value baked in there because he had some low scores when he wasn't playing that role.
Yeah.
But I would always be a little bit nervous that on any given day, any given week, North throw the magnets around. They're not by any means competing for a premiership just yet. So they are still tinkering that it could change on you very quickly.
Where do we expect Fisher and McKercher to play as well?
Well, not to spoil our mid-price or forwards episode, which is coming in a few weeks, but I think Fisher's been recruited to get into that half-back role based on what he did in the VFL and at the end of last season for Carlton. So that. And and McKercher's already had a bit of speculation that he might do the Sheasel thing this year. So.
Yeah, why not? Sheasel graduates to the midfield, McKercher.
And he said before, like there's I think multiple interviews of him saying that's where he wants to be. Like he wants to be a that midfield forward of stoppage affecting the game.
And he'll still be a fucking gun in there.
Oh, it'd be great for the team. And if you've got other people that can fulfill the role he did, then the overall team will be better. So
he's a good player. The last thing I'll say is that if you're picking him as a premium. And of all I think I've got my stats right here. I'm no bloody Popowski, but I did a little bit of digging. And of all the players across the league that are the top 3 averaging players at their respective team, there was only 2 players that fell into that category that went below 65 more than 3 times last year. Yep. And it was Sheasel and Dan Houston. And there was only one other player that went 3 times. So anyone else that averages top 3 in their respective team.
Very rare for them to be below 65.
Very rare for them to even be below 80. Yeah. And he's done that, 3 times. And looking at those games, maybe there's, role change or whatever. But
that's not out of the possibility with a player like Sheasel and a club like
That's not a flaw you want from a premium.
No, it absolutely not. And especially if you get one of those low scores early in the season, it's catastrophic because everyone else is going to jump on him later. They're going to get him cheaper.
It's built into his price.
It's built into his price. So, I'm more optimistic with him, but at the moment, he's not someone in my team. He's still someone I'm watching, but less than optimistic compared to him and other guys. Let's talk about another guy on the other end of the spectrum in terms of age profile. Tommy Stewart, who always seems to have some kind of reason why he doesn't quite reach the 100 average that he usually actually goes at. But another player, a lot of these defenders in the premium department, which we're talking about today, don't have the early buys. So Tom Stewart is one of those again. And he's had ceiling games. There's some talk about him more midfield time. He went into the midfield for like 2 or 3 games last year, which was quite random in my opinion. But what are we thinking with Tom Stewart and his potential value for our defence lines?
When I look at this one, I just can't see what changes for me. I know he has the 14 baked into his price. When we thought in round 1 he was done for the year. The way that all transpired.
Yeah, he came back pretty quick. Hey,
he did. He only missed 1 game. So, I mean, potentially there's some value there if you kind of that 14's in the average. But I just don't look at it and see what changes about that system. I don't see what changes necessarily about his role. I don't know why Geelong would suddenly give him this midfield role at how old is he now?
That's a good question. I have it here. He is 30. Oh, cross him off the list,
you know what that means. Chopped. So, and they've got some, decent young talent, I think, coming through that they might want to blood into their midfielder. So I just don't see what changes. And for me, that probably means just another kind of just sub-100 season.
So he's priced at 96.
Yep.
If you eliminate that injured game, he would have averaged 100.2, so just over 100. So there's about 4 points of value baked in there, which is not much, but at the top of the line, it's something. Compare him to someone that we said we were okay on in a Jack Sinclair, who's 29, so there's not that much of an age difference. He's priced at 102, so you get him for 6 points cheaper. I wouldn't argue that Jack Sinclair is someone who's super underpriced. Like, is there an argument to, if you're picking a D1, Tom Stewart over Jack Sinclair?
Instead of Sinclair? Yeah, I mean, I think there is. For me, Sinclair, it's just a feeling that he fits in a slightly different category. I think he is right at the moment. I mean, he's won 2 straight BNFs and St Kilda. He's the absolute focal point of their defensive through midfield transition.
Yep.
I just don't see that with Stewart. And I was going to say that maybe Sinclair has the higher ceiling, but Stewart can pop off. But I think a more consistent high ceiling.
I do feel as though Tom Stewart needs the game script to work in his favour for him to pop off. Like, he needs to be like on the field at the time where they are maybe waxing at the end of a quarter or something like that. Whereas
there's a bit of that.
I feel like Sinclair goes and gets his. Do you know what I mean? A little bit more so, but that's totally eye test related. Let me just last point on Tom Stewart just to maybe get you thinking a bit more. Look at his fixture coming up. First round, first week, St Kilda.
Okay.
Adelaide, which is a tough matchup for defenders, but then he goes against Hawthorn. Does he get a Finn McGuinness tag, or do they go somewhere else?
He has been a tag target previously, hasn't he?
He has. Western Bulldogs, which we know is a great matchup for defenders. North Melbourne, and then the Brisbane Lions. So I would say that St Kilda, Bulldogs, and North are all good matchups, whereas Adelaide is a bad one. Brisbane's a neutral, and I'd say Hawthorn could be a really bad one, could be a solid one, depending on if he gets tagged or not. So, yeah, it's an interesting run.
Yeah, some good points there, Devil's Advocate, I reckon.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to see what people have to say in the comments.
Yeah, let us know what you think about Tom Stewart, because he's on my list, like as a D1 with just a little bit of upside, but just again a dependable top 6 option, which I think he will be come season's end. And I want to throw at least one more, and we'll see how we go with time after talking about this guy. But I don't know if you're as keen about this guy as I am, but one of the few players that has the early buy that we're going to talk about today is Lachie Whitfield, who is he's got the round 3 buy, does GWS. He is priced at, I want to say, where is he? I'll bring my thing back up. He is priced at 94.7, so 95, 855,000. He also had an early injury in round 1. I think he was concussed from memory in that game in the Heat in Sydney. So after that, if you take that away, he averaged, what did he average? 98 if you remove the injured score. And he also got better as the season went on, averaged 101 in games where Himmelberg, Cumming, and Ash all played in the back line. So, and that coincided with the Giants also having a really good run leading up to the finals, and they started to mesh and play a lot better. What are your thoughts on Lachie Whitfield as someone as a bit of a unique option as opposed to someone like a Sinclair or a Stewart as your D1 option?
Well, if you pick him to start, like you said, he's got a round 3 bye. Yep. I also don't expect him to play a full season.
Yeah, that is the Lachie Whitfield way. He's not renowned for his durability.
But the North Melbourne...
He played 21 games last year.
The North Melbourne West Coast 1-2 punch in round 1 and 2 that's just tantalising, isn't it?
Juicy, yeah. And
why couldn't a team that doesn't have the bye?
Oh no, give that to bloody I don't know, Geelong or something like that. But yeah, North Melbourne West Coast first one, and then he comes back and he plays Gold Coast and St Kilda. Up to defenders in the past, and then St Kilda.
They were the bunny
for
team
defenders.
For
so first 5 rounds, he's got 4 really good matchups. Sucks that he has that bye in the middle there. But
so you reckon there's a scenario where you might just say fuck it and you just cop the bye?
I mean, maybe. Like if for example, I'm running a defender line where there's no other guys, so maybe
what about
in
Zach
opening
Williams?
Round, like Zach Williams comes out and flops, or isn't there round 2, or Kadeem Coleman and he doesn't look up to snuff or something like that, and these guys that are popular early buy options maybe aren't in my team, and I just have the one player. I think it's a legit something to consider. Put it this way: I'd much rather Whitfield than Dacos as like a premium option.
That could be a contentious take.
I'm sure it is based on the ownership percentage. He's like 3% owned versus 55% for Dacos. But I just think at the end of the day, he's a hell of a lot cheaper. His run is incredible.
It is a good run.
And you don't really think of him as a tag target moving forward. people have tagged. Tom Green tagged Josh Kelly.
Yeah.
Whereas that used to sometimes go to someone like a Lockie Whitfield. I don't think that's the threat anymore.
I think there's some merit to it.
He's got a ceiling as well, I'll tell you that. But yeah, the durability is always a bit of a concern. So that will do with the must-discuss players. Is there anyone else that you wanted to... We had a few other names. I'll maybe throw them out there, and if there's anyone that tickles your fancy you want to touch on. Nick Newman, Liam Duggan, and I've also thrown in Angus Brayshaw into the mix as maybe a potential option. Any of those three really sort of catch your eye?
Well, Nick Newman popped at the end of last season, didn't he? And everyone scrambled to get on.
He did. Do you know what was different? Like, why did he pop? Because
I wasn't watching Carlton closely enough.
I think it coincided with Doherty moving up the field.
It could well have been. I don't want to speculate because I really don't know, but I'm sure there'd be someone out there that could maybe give us some more insight into that.
Carlton fans, drop it in the YouTube comments.
The fact is he's now very expensive. Do we see there being potential, points of upside there? What's he priced at?
So he is priced at a 98. So he did go 106 after the buys, which is a fair sample size.
Is there a guarantee he comes out and just is back in that role? Because then it's kind of like he falls into that bracket around the Sinclair, the Stewart that we were kind of talking about. So is he a better pick if he's locked into that juicy role that he had?
Maybe. He's got the round 2 buy.
So that's a bit stinky, isn't it?
Yeah. And I tend to lean more to, if I'm going to do someone who's early buy, I still lean to the Whitfield just because of the run. Yeah. He is cheaper. So he's in the middle between a Sinclair and a Whitfield. Sinclair's, doesn't have the early buy, so that's a tick in his favour. Yeah. Whereas the cheapness of a Whitfield, the run of Whitfield is kind of a tick in his favour. He's kind of just neither here nor there a little bit. I don't know. Like the numbers and the back end of the season all suggest that he is value, but there's something preventing me from saying that I can count on it. Maybe it's the fact that he is 31. I don't know. It's my age just coming out. I can't really identify a clear, concise, this is what is different for him, and this is why he's going to be a 106 averaging player for this season, and I can just lock that in. I don't know if I feel like that.
Yeah, and I'd probably fall a little bit into that category as well. So many good discussion points from this one. I'm really intrigued to see what everyone else out there has to say as well, because we're just here talking shit.
Talking shit like we do.
we don't fucking know our ass from our elbow.
Yeah. Couldn't go back to Angus Brayshaw?
No.
Nah.
I'm not going Liam Duggan.
Melbourne seems like a stay away at the moment, but...
Who's Liam Duggan?
Liam Duggan?
Don't want to know about him. Who's she?
I don't know. I think there's some lots of really good discussion points for the defender line. I think there's some great options that, you could twist my arm a few different ways. I think at the moment I'm really liking Hayden Young. I'm really liking Nazaya, Wangani, Millera as premium options. Whether or not you rock 2 primo defenders or if you want to go a third and get one of those more expensive guys, that's maybe a discussion for another day in terms of structure. But let us know down in the comment section below. Who's your D1 right now? Is it Dacos? Have we convinced you to change that? Or do you think that we are a bunch of idiots?
This is fraught with danger. I'm telling you, get the humble pie ready.
Lots of time for us to change our minds and lots of time for us to keep talking about lots of other fantasy. Next podcast, we're going to be going through all the mid prices in the defensive line. And later in the week, we're going to be doing a bit of a defender ranking video. Bit of draft, but also some fantasy classic relevance there. So stay tuned for that. If you like this video, big thumbs up on the YouTube and make sure you subscribe over on podcast and on YouTube. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.